Anthony Hartwig here, YSN. We have a very special guest with us today. It is Kenzie Fowler, the voice of color commentary in the Little League Regional in the Central Region that our good friends Austintown 12U are playing in the championship game of tomorrow. Kenzie, thanks you so much for coming on and talking with us about this whole tournament and what you saw out of Austintown today and what we expect out of tomorrow too.
Look, they're well, first of all, thanks for having me. But I mean, I've been so impressed watching them throughout this entire tournament. They've had their backs against the walls. They've had by far the hardest path to get to the champ game. And, you know, it's just one of those things where you kind of get on a roll and nothing's going to stop you. And you can tell they're very comfortable in that elimination situation. But, you know, it is championship time. So they've got all those elimination games behind them, and they've done very well, and they've got a rematch on deck.
We've been talking about Mila Hamley all summer and what she's been doing through district, through state. Now we see her in the region. You got the chance to see her live today for Austintown. What, from your perspective, makes her so special and makes her able to go out and dominate the way she is so far in this whole tournament?
Well, just, you know, analyzing her as a pitcher, and she's so young, but she's got all the tools. Her mechanics are very sound. She has long levers. That's something that you can't teach. And, you know, pitchers come in all shapes and sizes. We know this, but I will tell you, it certainly does not hurt to have long arms. And she has good velocity behind her. So I am going to keep my eye on her for the next couple of years, because I feel like if she develops a couple of pitches and she, you know, keeps her foot on the gas, no pun intended, and keeps developing that velocity, she could definitely be something special.
She's known for being very stoic, and you watch her and she almost never cracks a smile for the whole game, whether she's getting a strikeout or if she's in a tough situation, same facial expression. How much does that help a young pitcher to not, you know, ride the emotional roller coaster that softball can bring you?
I think it helps a ton, especially the situation that they've been in the elimination game. You know, you could lose your first game and kind of hang your head, and you know, everyone's going to be always looking to the pitcher. And so that's something you learn at a very early age, is that all eyes are on you. And, you know, every pitcher can kind of act a little bit different, but she's definitely got that stoic game face about her. And I think it's done her team very well with how many games they've had to fight out of the losers bracket.
You said it, you know, they're done with the elimination games. This is a winner take all championship. What's that going to do, do you think, from the other side? Just talking about Iowa real quick. They haven't had to play for their lives yet. They've been playing just to stay in the winner's bracket. Now it's you win or you lose and you go home. Does that give Austintown a little bit of an advantage of being playing in these elimination games for the last week?
You know, it's interesting because that's always the question in sport, right? Like, do you want to have the play-in game in March Madness? You can kind of like get your feet wet, or do you want to rest your star players? And I think you kind of look at it both ways. You know, you look at Iowa, and they did have the day off. They get to rest their pitcher, rest their ace, and you know, they haven't played as many games as Ohio at all. I think has almost doubled the amount of games that Iowa has played. So, but also at the same time, if you're Iowa, you're like, or if you're Ohio, excuse me, I feel like I'm going to mix those two up a couple of times tomorrow. It's like Iowa, Ohio. I feel like they kind of like where they're at, and they like, you know, continuing to play every single day and keep the momentum going. When you've got a good thing rolling, you know, don't change it. But it is going to be a lot up to how much Hamley has left in the tank, because that's just a lot of games to pitch in a week.
You know, you played a lot of softball in your day. I mean, as an athlete, as a pitcher yourself, what side of the fence were you on? Did you like having the rest days, or would you like to have that momentum rolling in your favor?
Team-wise, I like to have the momentum. I like to, you know, just get in there and keep it loose. And I think it really helps as a hitter. I loved getting, you know, back-to-back games as a hitter. I always felt like I hit better on my second game. So if you're a hitter and a position player, you're cool with playing, you know, multiple games in a week. But I'm going to put my pitching hat on, and I would, as a pitcher, if I'm pitching all the games, I would vote for some rest unless you have some help. And, you know, they have done a pretty good job at trying to limit her innings, you know, where they've needed, and taken her out where maybe the game was in hand. And but as a pitcher, you definitely want that rest.
We're talking a lot about Mila Hamley, and obviously she's been getting a lot of attention. But man, backstops don't get enough credit when talking about pitching and what they're able to do to help their pitcher. I know you know that as a two-time All-American pitcher, how much your catchers helped you in your career. I know Bella Bumgart really stood out to you today. Her arm, her offense, what she was able to do with that triple in the first inning. What do you think you saw from her as a catcher that to help Mila Hamley and help that relationship from pitcher to catcher?
Yeah, kind of same thing. You look at just the physical tools. She's tall, strong athlete. She has a really good arm. She was, toes up on the chalk at the plate, and we saw her power with that triple over the head in left field. Kind of got the game going for Ohio. But yeah, she's got some good tools. I think she has the best arm maybe behind the plate in the regional. So that's huge. And like you're talking about, you're going to be the battery mate to, the ace, and she's done a phenomenal job. And you always have to remember with pitching reps come catching reps. And so every, extra game that they've had to play, that's an extra squat for the catcher. So hopefully she's kicking her feet up right now, hydrating, maybe, I don't know if there's a pool at the hotel or whatever it need be, because those catchers, they put in work.
Talking with her during districts, her softball role model right now is Kenzie Hansen, and I don't think there's a better catcher you could look up to. Literally won the best catcher of the year in softball, the Joe Bench Award. Went and picked it up in Cincinnati, Ohio, not too long ago. Um, whether you're the best catcher in softball or you're developing, what are some universal tools that you see from a catcher that you tell you like, okay, this person has what it takes to be a solid catcher in the backstop? What are some universal things that just make someone a good catcher?
I think it's a unique mix of a calming presence, but also dynamic leadership, because you have to be that calm force for the pitcher. You can't be a spaz back there jumping around like crazy, because the pitcher has to stay so locked in. But at the same time, you have all eight eyes that are staring right at you, so you do have to have a certain presence about yourself, and it's something that you definitely have to learn over time. You're not really born with that. It's kind of a unique position. It's the one that stands out above the rest because they're facing a different way. And so I think it's just about your presence and how you carry yourself. And you can always talk about the framing and, the footwork. Good, you got to have a good arm, strong legs, all those things. But to me, it's what you're presenting to your teammates and to the other team as well.
These girls are talking about role models in the national stage, but they also don't have to look too far for really good role models. The Austintown High School team won the state championship this year. So they have girls that are right down the street that are doing what they want to do in the next couple of years as a high school player. What do you think that does to a kid that's maybe 12, 11, 10 years old to watch girls that are going to be where they want to be in just a couple of years go and succeed and have the support of that community and that softball team right behind them? I mean, the high school varsity coach has been in every game of this regional. So what do you think that does for this team to be able to see the girls in the right in the future, like not distant future college, but right there, it's going to be in a couple of years, I'm going to be a varsity player, to see, what they're doing and them have success at the state level?
Yeah, statewide success is always going to be a trickle down effect, whether that's, you have a local pro team, or maybe it's the college team, or like you're talking about in this instance, the high school team, and trickles down all the way to the youngest levels. And you see it in every sport when teams, especially in the community, have success. It, ignites something in those youngsters to kind of be like, oh, that looks fun. I want to do what they're doing. And what do I need to do, and how early do I need to start, or where do I need to play? And so I think it's huge, whether it's, softball, baseball, football, basketball, you have that local community success, and it definitely translates to all levels.
When you were that age playing, did you have any local players in your community that you were able to look up to that had a lot of success that you kind of used as a local role model? I'm sure you had a lot of national role models on the national stage, but did you have any role models close to home that you looked up to?
Oh, absolutely. I can, name off a bunch of high school players when I was in middle school that I would go to the games, and I would sit in the stands and I'd watch them pitch and watch how they carried themselves. And, I would, kind of bother my pitching coach, like, hey, can you give me the same workout as, your high school girls? And he'd be like, kind of roll his eyes. I'm like, sure, why not? But, that's where it all starts, igniting the fire and seeing something that, role model that's tangible. I think, it's one of those things we always say, if you can see it, you can be it. And, yes, we want to see the visibility on TV and the coverage for women's sports, but I think it's so important, like you're talking about, to see something real life right in front of you that you really mentally think that, okay, I can do that. I can be her.
When you think of games that you've been able to call, obviously you call the top college games and the girls that have kind of realized that dream. And now you get to call these games in Little League where they're starting to realize that that dream's a possibility. What's it like to see the girls at this age kind of be able to look up to the girls that you call, on a normal basis during the college season and say, like, this is the level where those stories are forming that you get to call, in the spring. Those stories are starting to form here in this Little League level. What's that like?
Yeah, 100%. They showed a picture of me when I was like 8 or 9, and it was my first earliest memory of like really playing what I thought was competitive softball at the time, and it was my first All Stars. And that's where it all starts. That's when you start to you have, especially when you have a little bit of success, you start to kind of figure out like, number one, I love this game and I love playing with my best friends, but number two, I feel good about myself. I'm kind of confident. I'm good at this. My team is winning. I had a key hit, or I had 8 strikeouts. And, those little things kind of add the fuel to the journey throughout your entire life. And, it has to start somewhere. So it is fun to watch like these youngsters get after it.
You went on to do great things at the University of Arizona in your career, but was there anything about this level of softball, high school, and a little bit before that you kind of missed throughout your throughout your college career that you wish you could kind of go back and relive that kind of aspect of softball?
I think just how simple it was. There was, not a whole lot going on in the noggin when I was younger. It was just, hey, let's go out here and ball out. And, it's softball time. Let's get after it. You get older, your head starts to get filled with things for good and for bad. You get, more knowledgeable about the game, but then also you can sometimes let the noise, get in your head a little bit. But when you're young like this, it's so simple, and the game is so pure. And I do, envy these girls a little bit, because I'm like, dang, I do miss those days.
The big difference between this level when you were there and this level now is a 12-year 13-year-old, they were getting recruited back in the day. You could commit before you even stepped on a high school field. Now you see them a lot more loose, and they're not worried about where they're going to college at 13 years old. From a perspective of a fan, from a perspective of someone that gets to call all these games, what has that done for the youth level of softball to see these girls a little bit more loose and a little bit more back to the joys and the roots of this game?
Yeah, I committed when I was 14, which is wild to think about. I hadn't even thrown a pitch in high school when I had already decided where I was going to college, which is just a different time. So, I do love the fact that the legislation and the coaches got together and decided that this would be the best for our game, and it is. And there's no reason that we should be recruiting 8th graders and 7th graders like we were, 8 years ago. So I am happy where, our game has shifted that way recruiting wise. Doesn't mean that the coaches still aren't going to identify that talent, but to just take the pressure off of these girls for making that decision until their junior year.
These Little League girls get asked some really funny questions for the content of
Yeah.
ESPN and the broadcast. I want to turn that on you a little bit and get your answers to some of these questions that these players have to answer. What was your favorite dugout snack to have in the dugout as a player?
Goldfish. Goldfish. Had to get that good salt.
They have a lot of flavors. Was there any special flavor of goldfish
No,
or just the
just
original?
the rest are disgusting to me. So it's original or nothing.
A lot of girls get asked who their role model is, obviously. Who were your national role models that you would answer that if you were asked that on the Little League stage?
Well, I mean, when I was 10 years old, Jenny Finch was in her prime, and I grew up in Tucson. That's where I was born and raised. And so Arizona was the hometown team, and you're a 10-year-old, and Jenny Finch is winning the national championship. It's a pretty easy answer. So I always say Jenny, and I still say Jenny.
These girls are always dreaming of their walk-up songs because they don't have them yet. The Little League doesn't let you have a walk-up song. When you were like a kid and you were 13, 12, what were some songs that you were jamming to that you would have loved to have as a walk-up song?
Oh, that's a great question, because my answer from a 12-year-old versus what my walk-up song in college would be completely different. It would probably be some NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, maybe like Backstreet's Back. I could get into that.
And for people that don't know, what was your walk-up song in college?
My walk-up song in college was Tequila, the song from Sandlot.
When you think about some of the things that you love about softball and the funness of the sport at that level, what was the most fun experience that you had as a softball player at the ages of 10 to 15?
Ooh, there's a couple. I think one is my first year playing like Bobby Sox was my first All Stars, and then we did this whole thing. You go to the regionals. We went to nationals. I think we finished like sixth or something in Cupertino, California, and that was very formative because that was my first like real serious competitive experience, and it kind of set the foundation for what I went on to do in club. And I always remember playing in Colorado, which is the big club tournaments that's where you primarily get recruited. And when I was getting recruited as a 7th and 8th grader, I remember looking up in the stands and just seeing all these different faces that I'd never seen in person. But you look up and you see Sue Inquist, and she's sitting right behind home plate, and of course Coach Candrea is there, and there's so many others, the Weeklies. And so it was just very, very eye-opening. My very first like real recruiting, taste when I was 7th and 8th grade.
Dugout chants are the lifeblood of softball. You're never going to get away from them. It's what makes teams unique. What's your favorite dugout chant in there?
I was not a great cheerer. I'm going to be honest. I pulled the pitcher card a lot. I'd be like, look, guys, you do you. I need to sit on the bench and chill so I can stay in a good place and keep pitching my best. So I didn't really get into them. My sister was really into them, and my team was always into them, but I was not great. I was not one with the cheers.
Were there any okay, you weren't participating, but like you caught
Yeah.
yourself, tapping your foot along too, like, okay, this is catchy.
There's some bad ones that I really remember that like we would definitely get canceled. You could not be able
You
to say,
always remember the bad ones, right?
right? And so there were like you do like a parody of a song, and I like think about what the words were, and I'm like, what were we cheering when we were 9 years old? So I don't know, anything that had like a song melody to it. I always like just like the quick ones, like just very, very quickly after like you get a hit, you have a cheer right for that. Not the long ones that drag out throughout the entire inning, but just you want to have a cheer for like every moment, and I like that.
We'll take this interview first full circle before we let you go. Tomorrow, obviously, the championship game is at 3. You haven't had the chance to see Iowa live yet, but I'm sure you watched them a lot on tape, and
Yep.
obviously you saw Ohio today. What do you think are going to be some key factors in who's going to take away this regional championship tomorrow?
Oh gosh. I mean, I'm wondering if Hamby in the circle can continue to throw with the velocity that she did today. I think she's the hardest thrower in this regional, and you talked about how many pitches that she's thrown, and it is a factor, but she's the hardest thrower. And you could just tell, like, when she was throwing today, the Indiana hitters were so late. I talked about it a couple of times, how all the right-handed hitters, their hits were going to the right side of the field, and it's just the velocity that she's bringing. And strategically, she throws a lot inside to the right-handed hitters, because if you have the velocity, that's what's going to be harder for hitters to catch up to. And you could tell their defense was shifted for it. So I just want to see if her velocity's there. She's probably doing some recovery tonight as well. And then who Ohio side? Hannah Haxton.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the girl. I'm excited to see her in person because I think she's the best overall player. Whether it's pitching, hitting, fielding, I think she's the best. The Shohei Ohtani kind of this regional.
She pitched just as much as Mila Hamley did in that extra inning game. I mean, they were both going at it. They were both scoreless through 7. It was great to watch them do battle. Hopefully they get a battle like that tomorrow. Yeah. Last question before we let you go, because I'm a softball junkie. I have to ask, favorite game you've ever called as a member of, whether it be ESPN, Pac-12 Network, what's the one that always will stick in your mind is like, I can't believe I was on the call for this game?
Team USA, this was in 2020, and this was in February. So this was right before COVID hit. Team USA was doing a tour of the college campuses, and they were doing like a scrimmage or an exhibition, if you will. And I got to call that when they played Arizona, and it was a sold out crowd. I hadn't seen Hillenbrand pack that much in a long time. And Team USA won 3-2, and it was a close game. Jesse Harper hit a pair of home runs. We saw Kat Osterman pitch. Monica Abbott came in and closed it. And Deja Molipola, who is, just freshly off of playing for Arizona, was playing against her former team. So it had kind of all the drama there. And it was a very pinch me moment. It was very cool.
Kenzie, Fowler, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, talking about these two regional finalists that are going to go up against each other tomorrow at 3. We appreciate it. We appreciate your coverage of softball and bringing it to the masses, and we can't wait to talk to you again real soon.
Thank you so much for having me.